back to this week's episode of the Broken Kid Podcast. We are back with another episode. We are going to hit the road running on this one. I hope you guys are all doing spectacular as I am. We're going to be taking a trip down memory lane. At least I'm going to be taking you down a trip to memory lane, and hopefully you guys are down for it. And even if you guys aren't, once those belts are buckled, you can't undo them. So unfortunately, whether you want to or not, you're gonna stay for the whole fucking story. But anyhow, this is gonna be about my first girlfriend. Now, I had my first girlfriend when I was about probably 9 or 10, and there's nothing like it. They say that you never forget your first love. Well, I never forgot it, but for all the wrong reasons. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and say Orphan. Now, to you, you may think of I don't know, maybe the fucking movie from 2009. And if you thought of that, then let me tell you, this is exactly what that is about. The thing that they don't tell you about the movie is that aside from it being based on a true story, which it is, and I'm not talking about that shitty Netflix documentary about that creepy little girl who everybody thought because she stunk like dead skunk and like Shrek's breath, that because she walked around weird, that she was this con artist where she was pretending to be 12 but she was actually 40 or something, and then they actually ended up finding out that she was actually 12. She just was abused, which is sad in and of itself, but who cares about that? It's a crappy Netflix documentary. It scared me. She scared the crap out of me. I'm scared. But anyhow, this is going back to the real Orphan. We all know about the 2009 movie with Isabel Ferrara, or I forget the actress's name. I don't really care. But anyhow, I remember being in the third grade, right? Back in the third grade. And I remember just, being like any other kid. I was just on the swing set. I was punching kids. We were playing tag. We would throw rocks at each other. After school, one thing we used to do is we used to hold these fake WWE. We didn't know WWE was fake, but we would fight like WWE wrestlers, not knowing that it was fake, and we would end up almost killing ourselves literally after school. Now you can't do that anymore, because you do it now, you get a gun pointed at you by the police and you end up going to jail. But all this to say that I was pretty much just like any other third grader, getting abused, getting molested, being a latchkey kid, coming home and finding your mom drunk, passed out, and all this, pretty normal childhood. And I was a pretty bad kid, like in school. Like I wasn't very attentive because all the things I saw as a kid. So when I met this girl who she was a new girl, and she ended up coming in with she had this like weird dress, kind of like the Perry on the House, or the little Perry on the house, like that movie. She would have this like weird little she had this weird dress, and she had these choker, this weird necklace that was like a choker. And I remember being as a 9-year-old, you watch this and you're like, boner alert, you get turned on. You're watching this and you're like, damn, well, I don't know how long I can stay in this class without going up to talk to her or do something. And at the time, your body's going through, I don't know if it's going through changes quite yet, but this girl did force me to go through changes. Now, nobody really liked her because she thought she was creepy. I, on the other hand, thought she was really pretty and cute. Now, she didn't say a whole lot. Her name was Jess. It was Jessica, and she was quiet, and she was pretty much introduced as the new kid, and everybody made fun of her because she dressed funny, and she had like a ponytails. But I didn't think she was ugly. Now, I still don't think she's ugly, but none of that matters because nobody knows where the fuck she is. Last I heard, she escaped, and she killed her family. I guess we're waiting for the sequel, right? But anyhow, I remember going up to her and talking to her, and she was like, she ended up calling me some like insult. It was pretty weird, and I think she was trying to scare me away. But when I wasn't scared, I think she was shocked. So I ended up offering half of my sandwich to her, and we ended up sharing a Dr. Pepper, and we ended up sharing Pringles. And then later that night, that's not the only thing we shared. We ended up sharing yeah. But needless to say, we were hitting it off, and I was also hitting it from the back. And all we were having fun, and um, about like a week later, everybody knew about us, and she was kind of like the cool. She was a pretty cool girlfriend. If anybody ever said anything, she'd punch them straight in the face or kick them in the balls, and we became like a force to be reckoned with. And everybody was afraid of us in the playground. Now things started to get weird because she started to kind of like get jealous when I would talk to other girls, and by other girls I mean like the teacher. You know what I mean? Like the teacher was she was a girl. She was like 45 or something. Now looking back, it all makes sense. But she was jealous whenever I'd ask her for help. Now really, I was a really bad math student, and I was a bad student at everything. I was delayed in reading and all that stuff. But every time I asked her, she would like put me up against the wall and kind of like put her hands around my throat. And it wasn't like she was choking me, but I thought, I was kind of like, oh, I've always wanted the jealous type, and I've always wanted a stalker, because who doesn't want a stalker? It means that they're committed. Now, things end up escalating, and she ends up, watching me, and she ends up like following me everywhere I go. And good thing was I didn't talk to too many girls. I didn't talk to any girls because I was committed. So, I think that caught her off guard. So that kind of, that she was done with that. She was not worried about me cheating or anything. But one day, as we're walking through, like there's a secluded area, and there's a park. But if you keep going down the park, there's a forest. And she was like, I thought we were gonna go back there to like kiss and make out and do all just be boyfriend and girlfriend. And I really thought I was going to go on to marry this girl at 9 years old. And there was a lot of good signs that she was portraying up until that moment where she was like, she had this rabbit, and she was like, we're going to sacrifice him. And she had this like Latin satanic Bible. And, without going into too much detail, it was really weird. We ended up practically sacrificing this rabbit, and it was weird. And I didn't want to do it. I was scared. She had this dagger, and then she was reading she had this book, and she had candles all around. And she said, the gods are calling me to do this. And I was like, which gods? Because the gods the few times I've gone to church, they never say anything about killing. And she was like, not those gods. And she was referring to like a old demonic devil named Pazuzu. And she was like telling me all about this, and how this is her calling, and how she must sacrifice blood in his name. And I was terrified at 9 years old. But, I had to watch the Scream movies and Freddy Krueger, and I was like, damn, here I am thinking that shit would be cool to live in real life. And now here I have, this cute girl, threatening a rabbit and killing it. And it ended up getting worse and worse. And then, one time when I was in after school tutoring, this is really weird. So I was with my teacher was a female, and her name was Miss Hackett. And anyhow, she would, it's almost like we were doing after school tutoring, and I was the only student there. And I remember she was helping me with math because that was my worst subject. I was bad at everything, and I end up dropping my pencil. So I'm like, oh, let me go get it. And I bend over to go get it, and as I look up, I'm like, oh shit! And there, Jessica was standing right behind her, and I go like this because I didn't know what was gonna happen, and knowing her freaky ass, I was like, something bad is gonna happen. And Miss Hackett, the teacher, she was like, what's wrong, Alex? You look like you just saw a ghost. And I was like, oh no, I didn't see a ghost. I just saw something that I really like. Not knowing that Jessica made a noise. She said, turn around, you bitch. And when she turned around, she fucking smashed her head in with a hammer repeatedly. I was like, what? And then we had to go ahead and bury it. There was a back door in the classroom that was like the emergency exit, and she was able to like hardwire it and break the wire so that it wouldn't like set the alarm off. And I'm like, I don't know where the fuck you learned that from, but you got to teach me that trick. And then we're dragging this body for about like a quarter of a mile, and we're digging and digging and digging. We buried the body, and you know, I was scared. I was like, we got to do this. And of course, she was like, would you do anything for me? Of course I would. And then after that, she ended up, you know, let's say she gave me some special treatment. You know, I ended up going home that night, and we, you know, everything was good. I don't know how I didn't see the red flags, you know, especially because there was blood splattering everywhere when she hammered her head in. And later that night, you know, she ended up getting like jealous of, she ended up going on a killing spree, and she ended up killing her family that had adopted her, because she thought that she was about to get sent away to a like a reform school, kind of like a military school but for women. Like, what is it called? It was it was a camp, a behavioral camp, a behavioral changing camp, and she didn't want that. So what does she do? She does what any other 9-year-old girl does, and she ends up slaughtering him and her dad and her mom and the 2 kids who live there, and it was a mess. Now, she ended up saying, "Do you want to flee with me?" And then she said, "I have to tell you a secret." And I was like, "What? You're crazy?" She's like, "No, that's not a secret. You should know that by now." She said, "I'm actually not 9. I actually have a congenial condition that changes how at the rate I grow with." And she was like, "Really? I'm actually 20. I'm actually 29, about to be 30." And she said, "Do you want to take my hand and go?" And I said, "I can't go. I'm 9 years old." And essentially, she's like, "You're coming with me." And, you know, I ended up going with her, and for about 15 years, I disappeared away from my house, and we ended up getting different names, and I eventually ended up like leaving. And till this day, she hasn't found me. You know, I hope she doesn't. Oh, there's a knock on the door. Okay, wait. Let me just check that out. Okay, you won't believe this, but it's actually her, okay? If this is the last video you'll see, then it means that I probably didn't make it. I'm gonna set on auto upload, okay? I didn't think it was gonna end this way. I gotta go.